Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I'm Adam Weinrib, joined as always by Fansided's MLB insider Robert Murray. Happy Super Bowl week. Happy to potentially underrated free agents pick new teams over the weekend, given the fact that their skill sets aren't prized by the market at large. Luis Arraez to the San Francisco Giants. Eugenio Suárez last night to the Cincinnati Reds, a familiar face in a familiar place. The Boston Red Sox did not make the Suarez move. They did make a salary dump trade yesterday, probably a smart one. But what do they use that dumped salary for? What's next for the middle infield market? Are we on trade watch? Jerry Dipoto certainly made me think we got to eye him in the St. Louis Cardinals this week. But Robert Murray knows better than me. He can tell me and you, the rest of all of you, the viewers and listeners, what is up, what's going on. Get your questions in. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. Baseball tossed. You are correct. It does feel weird being on the other side today, but that's exactly what we're doing today. It feels good being back. We actually have some movement in the free agent market, and just so happens where the one time I'm moving throughout the weekend, or both times I'm moving throughout the weekend, is when the moves are made. So we're here to break them all down and talk about what's next, some other stuff that I'm hearing around the league. So it should be a good show. It should be pretty action-packed. At least I hope so. But good to be back. Adam Weinrib, how we doing?
Doing well. Make sure slight schedule adjustment this week, everybody. No prospect show tomorrow. We're moving that to Friday, so you get no show tomorrow. Robert and I Monday, Wednesday. And join us in the Discord if you're not already there. Join at the All-Star tier. You get a private Q&A with Robert on Thursday. Maybe you can even ask him about potential Super Bowl bets. The Patriots are such an underdog at this point that it scares me. Weigh in the comments if that scares you as well. And get your questions in. We're happy to answer them when we open Robert's notebook in the back portion of the show. But a couple of big moves this weekend to actually break down, even at the end of last week, with an extension that happened between shows. I don't think we're going to do 30 minutes on the Austin Hayes signing, although good for the White Sox. Again, good for the White Sox. Like Baseball Toss said, pretty hard not to have a universal approval rating for what they're up to under the constraints. I do want to talk about Luis Arraez first, because this is a guy who nobody can find a middle ground on. Either you love him because he doesn't strike out ever, and you can't comprehend why teams don't want the batting champ and the guy who led the league in hits in 2024 and 2025, or you seem to think he's functionally useless because of the glove and because of the lack of power. There's got to be somewhere in the middle. We haven't moved so far that we can't value what he provides, but in a way, it's also obvious why he is not getting treated as a multi-year player. And a lot of people are surprised to see the Giants, so dedicated to pitching and defense, go with the left side of the infield that is a couple of wizards, and a right side of the infield that is Rafael Devers and Luis Arraez. After all this, how did we get here?
It's crazy. If you would have told me last year around opening day that next season the Giants, their right side of the infield would be Rafael Devers and Luis Arraez, I wouldn't have believed it. But that's currently the reality. And the Giants have been looking for a second baseman for the majority of the offseason here. They had, I would say, extensive conversations with the Cardinals about Brendan Donovan. Obviously, we're not able to come to terms on a deal there, but they really like the player, just didn't align. Nico Hoerner was another player of interest for them, as Jeff Passan of ESPN said. But it's Arraez who ends up going to San Francisco, and his market began to crystallize in recent days here, where he was getting offers. He had obviously the 1 year from the Giants, but he had multi-years elsewhere. But his big priority was being able to play second base. Like, that was something that was made pretty clear to me in recent days, and ultimately ends up in San Francisco and ends up going there. And as far as offensively, their infield is incredible. They have some real threats there offensively. Defensively, I'm a little unsure of what that could look like. And it was the part that kind of confused me was when Buster Posey first started in San Francisco running the show there. A big priority for them was up the middle defense. You got Willy Adames, you got Luis Arraez. I mean, Adames, like, good defender. Arraez, kind of, well, so there's a lot of questions there, to say the least. And then you have Harrison Bader in center field, which I really like that move. They explored some other options in the outfield there for center field, but Bader is a guy who plays terrifically in that ballpark, should help a lot there. But getting Arraez was going to be their last big move. in my eyes here. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to try to bolster like the bullpen, but getting Arraez, getting Bader, it adds some sense to their offseason. That was kind of confusing before that, but I mean, 1 year for $12 million, no such thing as a bad 1 year deal. So I don't mind it for the Giants here.
Yeah, you can always work around it if you ultimately have to. But I agree, strange market, and one that I thought was going to be dead was going to last into camp, and ultimately a bit of a Saturday, laser focused target on the Luis Arraez market, where we're getting to the minute updates of like he's considering, he's weighing options. Oh wait, he's a San Francisco Giant. It materialized quickly once the pressure was on. I would say you mentioned Hoerner and Brendan Donovan, and of course the Jeff Passan tweet. So it's a bit of a pivot from that. And The Giants clearly covet what Arraez does, as well as what Donovan and Hoerner do. It is one fewer landing spot for those two, which leaves, I guess, the Mariners and Red Sox, or stay where you are. There's always the trade deadline. Now, do you expect at this point that both players stay put? The Red Sox opening is particularly interesting, given the second move of the weekend and the fact that they're looking at defense but aren't seemingly making a play for it at this point in time. The Mariners, too, Jerry Dipoto over the weekend all but said there's one thing we've been trying really hard to get over the finish line. We think there's a guy who's not here yet who's going to be on the opening day roster. That screamed Donovan to a lot of people. But what do you think the likeliest outcome is now? One moves, two moves, or both stay where they are?
As far as Nico Hoerner goes, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, if I'm the Chicago Cubs, I don't trade him. He makes you a lot better. And if you're trying to compete for a World Series this year, you need him on your roster. So if I'm the Cubs, I'm holding on to him. And my guess, unless they're blown away with an offer, they're gonna probably hold on to him. As far as Brendan Donovan goes, they're in a similar situation there, where they can listen to offers. Does not mean that they're shopping them. Like, I want to make that incredibly clear. Listening and shopping are two different things, but they're going to get plenty of different hits here on Donovan. And who knows, like the Mariners make plenty of sense to me. And maybe that could be the move that Jerry Dipoto's teasing. But there's going to be other teams in this as well. And the one that would stand out to me would probably be the Boston Red Sox. I think that would make a lot of sense for them, because they've had a very confusing offseason. We can dive into that at some point here during the show today. But Donovan, to me, feel like the more likely of the two to be moved, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them stayed put, because especially with Donovan, he's controllable. Does not mean that they have to trade him now. They can hold on to him, and maybe a team gets desperate before opening day. Maybe a team gets desperate around the trade deadline. They hold the cards here, and I mean, shoot, Chaim Bloom he's very, like, he's making sure he can extract as much value out of this as he possibly can. I think that's the best way to phrase it.
That Red Sox offseason goes from confounding to clear cut and back and forth seemingly every week. I still think they're not going to make it to opening day without bringing in some sort of defensive-minded infield addition to round out this roster. That said, a lot of people thought they would be on Eugenio Suárez, and they were ignoring the Ranger Suarez, we got a ground ball pitcher of it all, because, well, Eugenio Suárez was the most coveted player of last year's trade deadline. Eugenio Suárez hit 49 home runs last year. Eugenio Suárez's value was going down, it seemed, and they could maybe even step in. Maybe suddenly the market lined up, and he could be their 2018 JD Martinez, and everyone could go, the player made sense for the city, but the contract didn't, and then suddenly the contract did, and midseason everyone's kicking themselves for letting the Red Sox get Eugenio Suárez. Instead, he picks the Reds, and we find out it was down to the Reds and Pirates, and the Red Sox never really made an offer. Now, did that surprise you?
I was really caught off guard by this. I did not have the Reds going out and getting Suarez, let alone for 1 year for $15 million. Like, that was an awesome move for them. And it seems like it absolutely did come down to the Reds and the Pirates, and good for Pittsburgh for being involved in that. And it's not a case of, oh, we try. Like, they genuinely did want Suarez.
Yeah.
But he ended up going to a place where it's much more familiar for him. He's played there before, plays for a manager who is one of the most respected guys in baseball history. And you are added to that locker room where there's just an abundance of young talent and also veteran guys in this as well. I think it's a great fit for the Reds, and I give them a ton of credit because they were on Kyle Schwarber. They were never close, and they weren't one of like the front runners by any means. But it seemed like that was going to end up being their last big swing of the offseason. And then they obviously now get Suarez, and you add him to that lineup, and it makes them just even more dangerous. As far as what this could end up meaning for the Pirates, I have some various different thoughts on this. It signals that they have money to spend, and Suarez was a unique opportunity for them where they can end up trying to add a really strong player who almost hit 50 homers last year for 1 year for $15 million. With the, I believe, as some reports have stated, that they were willing to go higher on that 1 year deal. But if they have money to spend there, do they now pivot to a guy like Marcell Ozuna, who obviously is not like the same player as Suarez? Like, he's DH heavy here by far. I believe he's DH'd he DH'd 162 games in 2024, 137, I believe, in 2025. So, I mean, he's not going to provide you much, if anything, defensively, but offensively, he's at 100 home runs in the last 3 seasons, a really good overall power threat. And if you can get him for 1 year for around a similar dollar value as Suarez, I think that'd be a good move for the Pirates to go out and make. And if you can end up adding Ozuna, Ryan O'Hearn, and Brandon Lau, you add all 3 of those guys to that lineup, in addition to that pitching staff that they have. Like, I mean, bring out the pen again. Like, I mean, that would end up getting them to in my opinion, a definite postseason berth. So if I'm the Pirates, that's my pivot. I would go out and get him, and then you can still have some flexibility to go out and add a starting pitcher and a reliever. If you sign Ozuna, that probably limits the amount of guys that you can pursue for both of those spots. But still, offense has been your big weakness, and if you can add 3 of those like good bats this offseason, that's a job well done by Ben Cherington and that entire ownership group there. So I hope it happens, but we'll see. And also, I want to address something too here. Sorry, I'm cutting you off here.
No, all good.
There is Cole Dunston, which good question. It's going about the Giants here. Can we continue on the Giants? Are they still on Framber? And does Arraez make Schmidt tradable for a starter or a reliever? They've been pretty set on their rotation. They're happy with the guys that they have. They're going to consider any other option of like that could possibly be available that could end up making them better. But any reports about intensifying talks with Framber Valdez, it's not right. Not to call anybody out specifically, Hector. But then Arraez, it does make Schmidt tradable for sure. And they're going to get calls on him. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved him because there's no real clear spot for him as of this point. But they're not going to just trade him just to trade him. They're going to need to get value in return.
And depth matters as well. We appreciate the question, of course. Definitely wanted to get to the pitching market in a little bit. And so might as well do it now because we've seen the offense and the top of the market's gone. Middle of the market has thinned out significantly. We're talking about Marcell Ozuna and the Pirates, not because, if we were having that conversation a month ago, you'd have Pirates fans being like, whoa, no, Marcell Ozuna, but what about X and Y? Now he's probably the top free agent bat available. There is much more available on the pitching side of the ball. We've had Zach Gallen questions and Framber Valdez questions already. And we talked about, it's funny because if you're a pitcher, you want to get into camp early, and pitchers and catchers report early for a reason. You want to get familiarity. You want to get your full offseason routine in. You can do it from home, but you'd much rather do it according to, you would think, to the specifications of the team that you're about to join if you're a pitching free agent. And we've got so many big names who are still unsettled, from Gallen and Framber to Lucas Giolito to Nick Martinez, who out of this, in the comments, the Yankees tied to a whole bunch of people, out of the slew of nonsense Yankees rumors, that was probably the one that excited me the most last week. We'll talk about some of their nonsense, but we're still waiting for that pitching domino to fall. Who goes first? And it's got to be this week. We are running out of time.
Yeah, we are running out of time. And you'd think that these guys would want to get a new home lined up before pitchers and catchers report, just so they can not miss out on any spring training here. And shoot, I thought it was going to be Zach Gallen, but now I'm not exactly sure who can end up being the first guy to come off the board as far as the remaining pitchers go. Gallen definitely makes sense, and the Cubs have been connected to him for sure. There's been others. I mean, Arizona, although I don't know if they're going to have the funds to go out and get Gallen back. So probably get some picks back in return if if he does indeed leave, because they extended the qualifying offer to him. The Orioles, to me, make a tremendous amount of sense here for Gallen, especially as they continue to look for another starting pitcher. So if it's not him, like the other guy that I've mentioned before that has a hot market is Zach Littell. He's drawing a pretty strong interest throughout the league. I still think the Angels make a tremendous amount of sense for him as they continue to explore different rotation possibilities. But there's going to be more teams in addition to the Angels that'll be on Zach Littell. So you can look at those guys. Lucas Giolito is another bounce back candidate, whether it's probably going to end up being a short-term contract. I've seen the Tigers among teams connected to him, as John Heyman reported. But I know as a fact that there's plenty of others that are on Giolito. And then it's incredible to me that how little buzz we're hearing about Framber Valdez, at least publicly. And I don't necessarily know why that is. Is the incident that he had with crossing up the catcher, is that causing it? Is there something else? Don't know. But the fact that he's unsigned, seemingly not any closer to signing, is incredibly puzzling to me. So there's still some really good options that are still unsigned here. There's going to be teams that get a whole lot better between now and opening day. Well, hopefully not after opening day. Hopefully these guys sign before then. But it's very rare you see this level of talent on the pitching front available this deep into the offseason. But there's going to be teams who end up getting some guys here on some really strong values. So, I'm curious to see what teams go out and pounce and take advantage of this kind of opportunity here.
It is deeply odd. I will throw the Braves out, certainly. And we didn't mention Justin Verlander. We didn't mention Max Scherzer. The potential, hey, maybe they wait till June, but I don't think they're ready to hang it up quite yet. Mark Scheimer wants to know about the Braves' pursuit of a starting pitcher. I know they've been connected to Giolito a little bit in recent days. The Braves are tough to read, but it does feel like they do want to add to that rotation going into the regular season.
No, they definitely do. They want to go out and add to the rotation. I don't know if it's going to be in a Framber type by any means, but if you can end up getting a Giolito or a Chris Bassett type or someone along those lines there, I think that'd make a whole lot of sense there for the Braves. And they made it clear that they wanted to add to the payroll this offseason. They've done so, but maybe not to the magnitude that other people have thought. So maybe they can end up going out at the trade deadline if they're in a position to be competitive, or if they're back in being competitive, if they can go out at the trade deadline and try to make a big splash. And I don't necessarily know what that could look like. But one thing I know about Alex Anthopoulos is when there's a player of interest to him, he is absolutely relentless. And he's relentless, but yet you don't hear anything about it. And then all of a sudden a Braves press release drops and suddenly they somehow have acquired a big name player. So maybe like I'm not expecting them to be done at this point. I expect more. And yeah, I actually really, despite the injury to Ha-Seong Kim, I like how they're positioned here going into this season. You got Spencer Strider, a full year removed from his injury now. You got to get some other key guys back as well. So yeah, again, I don't think they're done, but I like what they're doing.
Gonna go to a few more questions. What do we think about the White Sox from Baseball Toss? Are they now finished, or do they have room to pounce in this, starting pitching market? Maybe get another flippable asset.
Yeah, I don't think they should be done. I don't think they're done by any means here. I think you can go out if you're them and try to be opportunistic in this market, because shoot, they did that with Sir Anthony Dominguez, did it with Austin Hayes. It gives them established big leaguers that they can probably flip for assets at the deadline. And they can go out and do that same exact thing with some of these other guys that are still unsigned here as well. So I'm extremely complimentary of what Chris Getz has done. I think he is – I said it on a previous show, and I'll say it again. He has done a tremendous job in what was a really tough situation when he took over. And it was not easy for them by any means. They had a lot of work to do, and they had to move Garrett Crochet, who looks like one of the best pitchers in baseball, not just the American League. But they maximize that return in a way that any other team should go out and try to do when they're trying to move a big asset like that. And internally, they still remain incredibly optimistic about what's to come for those players. And a lot of them debuted last season. So like they're a couple of years removed here from competing, but they're in a really good spot now where there's actual like hope and there's a vision with that team. And if you can add another player or two this offseason and trade a bunch of them at the deadline and get more assets, that's only going to further improve their future position. So I tip my cap to Chris Getz because, I think he's done an incredibly good job.
What about Perry and the Angels? I assume that's the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, not the Angel Chavez, the Yankees' newest reliever, who no one's ever heard of. We know Yoan Moncada is still sort of spinning in purgatory, and they maybe have some stuff to finalize.
That's done.
It's done. It's finished.
It's done. That one is finished. Like, it is official. So
okay.
Yeah.
So Yoan Moncada is an Angel. What happens now? Any more irons in that fire?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, with the Angels, I think you can always look at them for pitching, and I've connected them to Zach Littell before. So if you can look at another starting pitcher, you can look at, I still think, bullpen, and shoot, if there's another opportunity where they can add a bat of some sort, I think they go out and try to explore that as well. They're going to be opportunistic. I'm still not expecting anything too flashy here by any means, but I do expect them to make at least a couple more moves.
Well, we thank you for joining us, everybody, and getting your questions in. As always, an active chat. So funny at this point in the offseason. We're like 9 days away, maybe less than that, from talking ball, previewing the season, but there's still so many unsigned pieces. So this is where we hope that you'll continue to come watch Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, typically Monday and Wednesday this week, in the Prospect Show on Friday. If you got more questions, join us in the Discord. That private Q&A is Thursday afternoon, Super Bowl week, but the focus is still firmly on Major League Baseball here on the Baseball Insiders. If you've got more questions about the Yankees' terrible roster choices, come join me on the Yankees Go Yard podcast, but we'll talk about the league at large here. Robert, thank you, as always, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It feels good, by the way. My back no longer hurts. I hurt my back getting out of bed the other day, but I'm happy to report I'm back to 100%. So we love that. But Adam, I appreciate you. Everyone in the comments, I appreciate you. And see you back here, on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think Wednesday.